Welcome everyone to the live stream. We've got a few people in here, both from LinkedIn as well as YouTube. If we can't get to the LinkedIn questions, then we just can't get to them during the live stream. But we are definitely live on YouTube, and we're doing another podcast conversation. And you can see it, like, Mike, why are you off to the right? Well, because we're going to bring in this gentleman here in a second. Brandyn is I'm going to say Ewanek, and he's going to correct me. But it's parallel productivity. Why your restless mind isn't a deficit. It's a surplus of untapped potential. So without further ado, here is Brandyn. Brandyn, thanks so much for. Did I get did I pronounce your last name right?
Very close. Ewanek.
Okay. Ewanek. So no, it was not close at all.
And what's interesting, when I was living in Colombia, everyone could pronounce my name correctly there, which is weird. You wouldn't think it's a Spanish name, apparently.
Wow. So another Canadian in the house. You're originally are you back in Toronto now? You said you were back in Toronto.
I'm back in Toronto. Yeah.
Right. And we know we're Canadian because we didn't say Toronto. So we are fully. Brandyn, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, one of the things that I wanted to get out of the book, and I've got my questions here. So this book really isn't about doing more. It's just, and for me, this really spoke to me, like using attention differently within the same time. Because for me, productivity is about the alignment of intention and attention, right? So what do you feel is the core problem with how we've been taught to think about productivity that this book is trying to kind of solve?
So this is really, I have been told my whole life that we're not able to multitask, right? Like we should not multitask. That's something bad. You're going to ruin your productivity. And I feel like I've been doing it my whole life. And I just wanted to explore it. I got put into a situation where I had to go back to school. I had to work full time. I had to write this book, and I had to do many other, as we had to have a wife that I had to spend time with. And to be able to do all of those things, work full time, go to school full time, spend time with my wife and many other projects, I had to explore how to do that. And so I explored the idea of parallel productivity, the idea of multitasking, and what is really possible. Because I was told that it's not possible. It actually turns out to be that it is possible, and it can be done within the science. It can be done quite well and quite easily, and it can be beneficial. Because if you think about it, we all listen to the radio while we're driving. And if multitasking is a no, how can we really do something so dangerous, so risky, and still listen to the music? And that actually has to do with the concept of open channels, where we explore the idea of, or we have different sensory inputs. So driving is more of a physical concept, and then we have an auditory input. And because those actually connect in our kind of before they go into the brain, they connect very late. And so we can actually separate those really well and manage those very easily, listening to a book while we're going to the gym. And I would say it actually makes going to the gym a little bit more enjoyable if you're reading a good book while you're at the gym and stuff. Well, it's like, I don't know if you come across this. I'm sure people that are watching this or listening now, like, I have to turn down the volume on the radio when I'm looking for a house. Like, let's say it's at night and the house, I'm going to a place, or I'm trying to find directions. Like, there's this, and it's a phenomenon that a lot of people are like, why do I have to do that? Why do I do that? So that explains that very clearly. Like, it's like, hey, I can't focus on the music. It's noise to me now. It's no longer, it's disrupting signal. Exactly, right? Because you're really doing analytical thinking, right? And so if you're also trying to listen to a book, but you're trying to get analytical insights from that at the same time, you're using the same part of your brain and doing things like that. Yeah, it does not work and stuff. There are ways at the same time, parallel processing in the book, that's not really possible, but something like a strategic switch, where if you were to say, I want to go in for 5 minutes and read this book, and I'm going to come back to this project and switch back and forth. As long as you plan that out in advance, it actually can work quite well. And a good example of that was in the book, Monica Voles. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but I believe that's her name. She actually did the same thing when she started Ambitious Kitchen. She managing a family, toddler, a baby, crying, naps, tantrums and stuff. And how are you going to manage all their time? And so what she did is she created a preset list, a menu. I think she called it Mise and Palace and Place.
Mise en place, which means everything in its place. Yeah.
Okay. I never understood that concept.
It is a cooking term, mise en place. Yeah.
Okay. So she made like a little menu of things that she could do when she had 10 minutes, she would just look at this list and then do it. And if you plan out these little switches, you're able to do it. But doing two things at once, two analytically thinking about two different things, I would say that's impossible, right? That is multitasking that can't be done. And that's what we want to try to get away from, is that frantic multitasking, right? That's not what it's about. It's about being very structured, planned within the science, which is different than I was told when I was a kid. And that was really what this was about, is exploring what is possible. What can I do while multitasking? And I don't know. I feel like I've done a lot and stuff like that. I think it's just starting to compound. And I think at this age and this time, in this time in the world, it's important to try and get as much done as you can.
Well, and I think in the right way too, because I mean, you mentioned the strategic switch idea. How do you discern whether it's a distraction or whether you've made that productive switch? Like how can people use it without it seemingly backfiring on them?
No, fair enough. And I would say it's all about planning. So the big thing about strategic switches, just for the viewers, the listeners, it's where you switch into a task for 5 minutes. So if you have something like you're waiting in line, you could just go on Facebook and scroll. Anytime you can scroll would be a good opportunity to do something productive instead. So a good example is when I am teaching in the mornings and stuff like that, and I have a 3-minute break in between my classes, or a 4-minute break in between my classes. Not a lot of time, but it's there. I know ahead of time that I'm going to go and do Duolingo. It's not going to be the language that helps me speak the language, but it's good to start learning lots of words, and then, create a base for when I actually go visit a country. I'll have a good solid base. But I'm learning Japanese, Chinese, speak Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic, and I just do a little bit every morning. But I have it planned, so I know when I have this break, I can go switch in. I have a little app on my phone. I built a gem in Gemini, a predefined little function in Gemini, or you could do the same thing in ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. And I just say, when I'm standing in line, instead of just scrolling on Facebook, it will research. Let's say I want to learn about learning, and I was talking about the next book that I was writing, and I'm researching right now for learning. And the way that I do that is I will go to this app that I made, or this little function in Gemini, and I will go learning. And it will research, it will scan the last 6 months of research and scholarly or Google Scholar research, and give me kind of what is the latest developments of research. And what's kind of nice about this, you actually get that little dopamine hit. It's not exactly the same as scrolling, but more productive type of dopamine hit. But you're able to do a lot, and I'm able to then just quickly save that. And so I would say that I can research 2 or 3 articles for my next book while I'm waiting in line for, soup or something like that. So is that productive? I would say, yeah, I would got a lot more, if I could scroll and see what my friends are doing on Facebook. On this side, I can research my next book, and that's actually how I did a lot of the research for parallel productivity, is that same concept of little sessions of micro research. And that, I think, is just a very valuable thing. So how do you determine it's valuable? I think you have to be honest with yourself.
It's got the intentional aspect, but intentional in a way that is it going to move you in the right direction. I mean, Paula put this here at Paula's Picks. Happy Tuesday, because we're recording this on a Tuesday. Love Brandon's polyglot. Is it polyglot or polygot? I can't remember. Either way, it's a goal to learn a bunch of languages. So
lots of languages. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I think we all have to be learning so much in this day and age. And, while I was writing parallel productivity, I, officially became a data scientist, got the actual education to move me into this industry after I had been teaching it for a long time, and decided to make the formal switch into data science. But I did all that, and I was able to learn and pass my tests in university going through using a very similar technique. I made a predefined gem in Gemini where I give it the whole textbooks and stuff. And whenever I have the 5 minutes, I'm just doing practice questions and stuff like that. So I was able to study for AWS certificates as well. And I was able to study for the first 2 that I've gotten, all while I was with my wife, but she never even noticed I was studying. So it'd be like the 5 minutes before I went to bed, here and there when we're walking, waiting in line. But it's those little micro moments. And in this day and age, 5 years ago, those micro moments were, better to be on Facebook, I guess. How much could you really do with 3 minutes?
Sure.
Now we can do so much with 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And so we need to be thinking of that not as wasted time, not as lost time, but really optimizing that lost time that we just kind of said, man, might as well be on Facebook.
Well, and what I think is also key for people to understand here is that it's optional. So it's not like you're sitting there going like, I'm going to do this every single time. It's just nice to have options. And I think that because you mean optimal and options, like optional or optimal, right? Like you can decide what to do in that moment, because not everybody wants to. I mean, we are human, right? So there are elements of that relational kind of stuff that needs to happen. But what's interesting to me, and this is actually leads into my next question, like, you know, when you're doing this kind of deeper work, like you're in school and stuff like that, like deep work to me, you know, there is this full undivided attention, not those micro moments that you're talking about. So how do you decide? I mean, you've obviously accomplished quite a bit in a very short period of time, and you're continuing to do that. How do you decide what deserves full focus versus what can kind of be layered or paired with something else?
So there are times, and I would say, so I moved into data science, and I would say I love writing Python code. Well, it doesn't happen as much Gemini, but I love supervising Gemini, writing the code, building AI agents on AWS. There are things where you have to use your full brain power. It's just, you need to be thinking about many aspects, many things could go wrong. And in those situations, when I want my focus, I don't like to listen to music. I would say the one thing that you said about deep work, and I actually propose this in the book, is what if we could, what if our brains just kind of are a little bit hyperactive these days with all the technology that we've gotten used to, and if we can occupy or take away 10% of that attention that's kind of distracting us a lot of the time. And this actually comes from, well, I don't want to try to pronounce this book, but when I was meditating, and I mentioned this in the book, how when you get so strong at meditation, you get so good at meditation, you actually have to learn to not focus, not put all of your attention on your breath, because your mind, you kind of squeeze that too tight and you kind of slip off. And it's the same idea with deep work. So what if we can distract, maybe just listening to music while you're studying and stuff like that, giving it 5% of your mind something to do, so the other 95% can slip into that deep work a little bit easier. And that's often what I find is just that ability to slip with this idea of parallel processing or strategic switches. You know, you can slip into deep work a lot better, and you know, taking like a 5-minute break to learn something new on a little function that I programmed, or just, you know, anything like a little lesson here, better than scrolling. And you're still kind of, you know, you're going to do that. You know, you're going to take a 5-minute break, you jump back into it. And I don't think it disrupts deep work. I thought we always say deep work has to be this isolated 90-minute session, but is that really possible? And if it's not possible, how can we still enter that state of deep work, that sense of flow, in the 5 minutes, right? Because we can move ourselves there faster if we understand how to occupy the other parts of our attention, so that our main, that deep work, that internal kind of focus can kind of flourish in the sense.
Well, and I think deep work, there's a couple things I want to bring up here. Number one, and this is just for me personally, is that I actually don't mind listening to music with lyrics in it when I'm doing deeper work, right? Like when I was writing Productiveness, like the core thing for me was I was listening to things like the White Album by the Beatles, or Grace by Jeff Buckley, or any of these ones, largely. And when the book comes out in the fall of 2026, you know, it'll be evident that those things were partly there. So there was some inspiration behind that, but it also, but not so much. I've always done that. I've always been able to kind of get that deeper work done with music with lyrics in the background, especially familiar ones. Like, see, that's the other thing too. It's the familiarity part, which I'm sure that you can probably attest to.
And just a question for you. Do you think you could do that while listening to an audiobook?
No.
Do you think that would be this? Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing about, we have to understand, and that's the big part of this parallel processing concept, is we have to understand that listening to a song that I'm familiar with takes, 5%, 2% of my attention, and taking that away. But listening to an audiobook that you really get into, that starts to take 10, 15% away of your attention. So you have to learn how to balance those two, because you're right. Because listening to an audiobook that you're really into, or maybe a book on business or marketing that you're thinking about for your next book, and some new ideas that you're going to do for marketing, that pulls you out of the deep work, right? So you need something to just distract you, but not overwhelm. You can't get to 110% attention. You only have the attention that you have, right? So you have to learn. And that was one of the things that I talk about in the book, is kind of gave a little guidebook for that, how you can learn to find your own. Reading a book that I know is 10%, listening to music that I've heard 100 times is 1% of my attention, studying for this thing, focusing in deep work is 60%. So I need to make sure that I don't overlap my attention and sort of things. So But yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things that because this isn't just about getting more done. I think it's again getting more of the right things done. Because often when we think about like quote checking off as many boxes as possible, there's no deliberate element behind that. It's just like, okay, if I can have 43 check boxes at the end of the day, then that's a productive day. But what if 38 of those are not necessarily moving the needle in any specific direction? I think when it's working, so when somebody shifts from like kind of, for lack of a better term, managing time to living within it, which is what we're talking about here. We've not talked about time management at all. Even though you could argue that someone's saying, well, okay, so you've got this downtime and you're managing it. Like, you're not really looking at it going, okay, well, I've got this. How do I manage this? It's more again about this parallelism that you're talking about, right? How does when do you know that it's working? Like, when do you kind of get to the point where you're like, okay, this not only is delivering results, but it feels right.
Well, I say when you write a book.
So
and
for the
that's when you
authors
start to
on
know.
this call, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, and the thing is when do I know it's working? You know, you see the results. I think that's the thing. So I finished a bachelor's. Having gone back to school, I kind of had to do a data science education on my path to a master's, and so finished a bachelor's. I mean, I teaching full time. I wrote a book. I've gotten certifications kind of up and down, and I'm working on. I have another one tomorrow, right? And just keep going and stuff like that. And I could talk about that. I didn't take any time away from the time that I spend with my wife, and that's really what it's about. I think the overall premise of the book is following your ambitions. And my ambition was to write a book. I created a website, and there's going to be a training app that follows that. But I did that without taking time away from my wife. So you want to be able to follow your ambitions, but also still then, well, that's great. It frees up time and stuff, but it's not time to just do more stuff. It's time to spend with your family. So your work time is more valuable so that you can put it away and then go spend it with the time that you have with your family. You can truly be present with them and stuff. And I think that's one of the things that I have found has been really valuable for me, is that I'm not stressed when I'm with my wife. I'm not thinking, oh, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. Because I'm like, I got a lot done today. I did check off. Maybe there's one thing that was kind of a little bit silly that I checked off, but I checked off lots of valuable things. And the book isn't really helping people determine what is valuable and what's not valuable. I didn't really get into that.
Because that's nuanced, right? Like, it's a nuanced thing. You'd be writing forever. You could probably have supporting material. Actually, this is an interesting question too from Porter 42. How do you keep those quick actions from turning into doom scrolling or a distraction? Because it's a slippery slope, right? Like, you can go from this divertedness. Because I often talk about like disruptions or distractions can turn into diversions, but I don't really go into the idea of like a diversion can then turn into a distraction, because it can be both, right? Like, if you've diverted yourself to the point where now it's like, okay, now I've got this level, especially in people who are neurodivergent, because I think that's when it happens. When diversions turn into distractions, it's often this neurodivergence element as opposed to the other way around. So I'd love for your thoughts on this. I'm not the only one, Sarah, and as well. How do you keep these quick actions from turning into doom scrolling or a distraction?
Well, I think it's almost to replace the doom scrolling, right? So that's to be one of those things. Instead of I could go do this, and like I was saying, Monica Voles, the mise en place,
mise en place, yeah, mise en place,
mise en place. I gotta say with a French accent, mise en place. So to say that, like, she predefined what her action, and it's in the book, it's the action list in parallel productivity, but she had her menu of items that she was going to do. And so you could turn it into a distraction if you have nothing to do, you kind of default to doom scrolling. You default to one of those things. But for anybody, whatever your version of productivity is, and I think if you're honest with ourselves, we all know what that is. And if we can break that into, and we often can with AI helping us these days, into little chunks of 5 or 10 minutes. And I suggest making a list of, this is a 5-minute task, this is a 10-minute task. And so I always know, I'll go to my little cheat sheet and I'll look and say, okay, I got 10 minutes here, I can do this task. And that's what it's about. It's about planning it in advance. It's not just assuming it's a distraction. It's not just assuming it. I know what I want to get done. I'm an ambitious person and I have lots of goals. And so I'll never have time to do all of my goals. But I know that if I keep chipping away at them in these little sections, eventually I wrote a book. I edited the book while I was waiting for pizza sometimes and stuff like that at the store and stuff. I edited the book while I was waiting in line. And little by little, sentence by sentence, apparently you get a book. But it was one of those things.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that it's okay. I think this is where to throw my own 2 cents in, is doom scrolling. It's scrolling isn't bad. When it turns into doom scrolling, it is, right? So you could put on that menu 15 minutes of scrolling time. Like you could, if it's deliberate and intentional, I think that's okay. But again, you got to listen to this is where timers help. This is where, like, to your point, this is where, like, okay, I'm giving myself permission to do this for X number of time. And then because the thing is that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is when the default happens, right? Like you talked about, like, oh, I'm all done these things. Now I can do this. And then it stretches and stretches and stretches, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to do this. And because I've been deliberate and intentional about it, I'm only going to devote this much attention to it, whether it's time, energy, whatever. And then you get to say, okay, the timer's gone off. At that point, you're at that point of inflection. Whereas I'm going to, I know that I should stop now, so I will, or I know that I'm not going to stop now. What is the outcome of that, right?
Yeah, if you don't, and so, I honestly tried to get away from scrolling. I don't do that much. It just is addictive at the end of the day, and I notice, and it's hard to put it down in one of those things. And they actually just, I think, approved a lawsuit for a woman against Facebook and Google. I think it was YouTube, and just admitting that it is absolutely addictive, and they knew it was addictive, and they never told us, right? And so it's just an addictive hit. I will say I do doom scrolling. My when I let myself do that, it's when I go to the bathroom. And that is my time to be inefficient. I would say that's the time that I take the break. And I will say that I have to restrain myself. It's hard not to sit on that toilet for more than 10 minutes. And
technically, you're multitasking, I guess.
You're technically multitasking, I guess, right? Like,
just took a turn, my friends.
Yeah, I know, but it's one of those things that's kind of, my time, and that's, I let myself do that during that time. Because it's kind of a personal time, right? It's one of those things where I guess I could be productive in the bathroom, but it's kind of like, am I going a little bit extreme if I'm doing too much, right? And that's like my time out is when I'm in the bathroom, and I do that.
Yeah, and see, what's interesting is that I think a lot of people are trying to get away from doing that because of no, but seriously, I mean, I know it's because they know that they will spend the time there when they shouldn't be, and so they purposely leave it out. And I mean, we've all seen the tropes of like people dropping their. I mean, I know we're going off a bit of a tangent here, but like I've gone to the men's restroom and I've seen people like holding on to the phone with one hand and doing their business with another, and you're like, guys, like,
well, that's a little
much, right? So I mean, the point is that
hope you have good aim, I guess.
Finding that personal time, and I mean, for me, it's to kind of bring it back to like the energy component. Like as a night owl, for me, the morning is, and anyone who's been in my community and knows that we have these morning focus fix sessions, which are dedicated to like, again, these fixes of focus, not like deep immersive focus per se, but like, focus on, you could focus on a project. You could focus on, like, for example, in time crafting, we talk about like themes. You could do all that stuff. So to me, but I, and Sarah will say this, she's in the chat right now. They know that when I get on that call, it's a 7 a.m. call on the West Coast for me, although it's 10 in Toronto and other parts, I am not good to anybody. So my morning routine involves the LinkedIn puzzles. Like I will do those LinkedIn puzzles as part of my morning routine to wake my brain up. That is part of it, because, and I give myself permission to do that then, because if I was doing that at night or later when I'm at a better level of, creative thinking, deeper work, that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm not going to throw on a record first thing in the morning when I'm in a focus fix session, because I will just listen to the music, which, by the way, is fine. But often I will sit and write with that music playing. So it's knowing oneself, right? That's a huge part of it.
Exactly. And I think as much as I kind of wrote a manual in the book of what I thought, what I have found, this takes 5% of my attention, this takes 20% of my attention, this takes 80%. That's very personal. And I think that's the thing, is we all learn differently. We all, in the study of neuroscience, and kind of the other side of this was how we learn and stuff, and parallel productivity is how do we multitask. And kind of became very interested in just neuroscience in general after I was in an accident in Colombia. And I had a little tiny brain injury when I was in the middle of the pandemic when I was living in Colombia, and I became my own fault, stupid bicycle accident, decided to ride a bike in a rainstorm and fell down. Something hit me underneath my helmet in the back of the head, and I spent a month in a coma in Colombia, and they took really good care of me. But from that, I became just very interested, and that led to the eventual creation of this book, and that just kind of really understanding how our brains work and how we learn as humans, but then how do we multitask as humans in the age of the AI, right? How do we do so much? But you have to know your energy, right? I'm just a very ambitious person. I have a little bit of. Have you ever read Robert Greene, the laws of human nature?
Yeah,
He
yeah,
talks about death meditation.
Yep.
I got a very healthy dose of that, and so I have this kind of extra push that I don't think is normal, and I don't think people want to be pushed as much as this.
Yeah.
But
I don't think
you can make it fun.
Yeah, I don't think you get that. Like, I think it's also the phase of life, right? Like, because you don't have kids yet, do you? Do you have kids?
No.
So kids change the game, right? Kids change the game,
Yeah.
but also age. Like, I mean, I think about when you start seeing, like, my aunt, literally today as we're recording this, turned 80. My mom is a couple years behind. Like, so you see your parents get older, and you're like, the mortality stuff starts to show up in your lives a lot more, which you can either. And this is
Like
the
that
interesting thing.
TikTok.
Yeah. The ticking of time, right? And so you can either, again, there's some people that push and hustle and do that, but then there's others, and we actually had a conversation about this in a workshop we did today inside of the Time Crafting Trust community, where we talked about, like, you realize that a lot of the stuff that you were working on didn't really move the needle or matter all that much, and the important stuff really did get done. And so you start to think about time differently. You start to think about things like attention. You start to think about, like, what are ways that I can refine my approach, optimize. I mean, Paul is asking a question here, which I think is a great one, because you mentioned multitasking. Like, what's a good way to switch between tasks or types of focused work? I multitask, but it's been said that it's disruptive to productivity. And we've heard, I mean, I like the term tandem tasking, which is what you've alluded to, which is like, I'm going to wash dishes while I listen to a podcast, or I'm going to, I'm standing in a line, so let's do this, or what have you. So, I mean, I'd love for your thoughts on what you address in the book, as well as your own thoughts maybe that have gone beyond the book around this.
In terms of, like, how can I be more, like, how can I use
what's a good way to switch between those tasks or types of focused work? Yeah.
So I like we talked about, the biggest thing in switching is that we plan it out in advance. Because if we don't, every distraction that you have when you're trying to do your deep work, it takes 23 minutes to go back into that task. And so it's kind of a cost of switching a task. And so I think that's why lots of people avoid it, is because they feel that it's hard to describe what that feeling is, but you can feel that you just almost don't want to switch into this task. You can feel that it's going to be a little bit draining.
It's the moment you're going to lose momentum, even though we're going to lose it anyway, even though we know we're going to lose it anyways, because it's tied to energy.
Exactly. It's those momentums. But if you plan it out in advance, you can actually reduce that cost to close to zero. And they've done studies on this. And if you can get that cost to zero, if you plan it out in advance, you can really switch. I would say two types of deep focus, or two types of productive work. So I would switch between learning and another productive task. So writing a book, working on a second one, working on websites. But I always kind of switch, and I take little structured breaks from those for 5 minutes, and I do that. And I actually find kind of time boxing from Tim Ferriss, the idea of you try to fit more into those seconds. So if you say, I'm going to do for 20 minutes, I'm going to do this, 5 minutes, I'm going to then take my break, but my break is going to be spent doing a little study session or a little practice for my certificate that I'm working on, or whatever you're studying. And you just keep going through that and stuff like that. But then you kind of go back to your main deep work. I think the thing is you always it's never equal. And I think that's the one switch, is you don't generally have things equal. Parallel tasking or strategic switch, you don't have them 50-50. And I make the case that that's the hardest way to split a task, and especially with parallel processing. If you have, 50% of your attention on one thing and 50% on the other, that's really hard. It's much easier to do 30% on one task, cooking while listening to a really engaging podcast. Maybe your podcast.
Well, it's left right brain stuff, right? Because one part is like you're almost saying consumption one side, creation on the other. To a degree, right? Like not equally
I
split.
guess so. Yeah, I never really thought about that. Yeah,
not equally split. But I mean,
yeah.
And what's interesting, and I want to shift gears before we wrap up, is the conversation around AI, which we've gotten to a bit, and you get into quite a bit in your book. Decision sovereignty stood out to me because the term sovereignty I love. I love the idea of time sovereignty and attention. The problem with sovereignty is it's gotten such a bad rap in recent years because of movements around sovereignty and all that stuff. That word has kind of been co-opted and corrupted, not just in our neighbors to the south of us, the United States, but also in Canada and so on and so forth. So a sovereignty is not the world. It's not a bad word. It actually is super, super helpful. It's it just gets tethered on to certain things. But what I've noticed is, and I'll give a great example from my own my own world. And this is going to happen. Well, it would normally happen today, but my wife is on dinner duty today, but we share dinner duty, right? And so normally I cook about 4 nights a week and she cooks about 3. It just depends on what's going on. Well, in the instance of like tomorrow, I'm doing a live stream and I've got a lot of stuff to go and work on. And it's going to require my attention, my devotion, like active participation. So this is where I think generative AI can be helpful. Is it's going to help me with the things I don't need to be actively engaged in. Like, hey, here's our ingredients. Make me a healthy recipe that I can feed to my family that will, and this is my parameters, and I give it everything it needs.
Just take a picture of the inside of your fridge and like, what can I cook tonight?
Yep. You can go that wide, or you could narrow the lens if you want, whatever. You could say, well, we ate fish last night, so let's not make it fish. And we did that. Like, you can get as wide or as narrow or niche as you want. But what that's done is it's free. That freedom of it going, okay, you came up with that, great. Now I can focus on this. I think that's something I'd love to hear your thoughts on how that benefit can outweigh or short circuit the fears, trepidation all around using generative AI, other than the fact that we've been using it for a long time and probably just didn't notice it. But let's leave that aside. Like maps, all that stuff is
consciously using it.
There you go, consciously using it. So can you, for someone that's struggling with this idea, not in the quote, if you're not using AI, you're going to be left in the dust, like the business stuff. I'm talking about like real life human kind of, interaction, like the real world stuff. For someone who's weighing those, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, something like your cooking example, I think that's great. You could spend your time, going through your food, looking at what's outdated, whether what's old, what's not old.
Recipes, reading blog posts, that take forever to get there because they're. You've heard this. Have you ever heard the joke about like, the recipe blogger that murdered someone, but they never knew because they confessed midway through their blog post, like where the ingredients are in a recipe, because blog posts for recipes take forever. But I mean, I don't want to, or Google, like my wife has said, and others have said this. Well, just Google a recipe that says like chicken recipes or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't know how much I have. It doesn't know any, this narrows it down. So sorry, I didn't mean to get you up, but it's like that joke.
No. It's true, right? So we can think of, what does that do, right? Like, what does that do? So I could be Googling. Google loves if you Google things and you go look at their advertisements and they make a little bit of money when you do that. Or you can just ask Gemini.
They put the AI right at the top now anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I still prefer Gemini. I like not looking at ads, I have to say, or ChatGPT. I like going to the actual chatbot. But what does that do, right? Are we does that free up time for us to spend more time in the bathroom looking at our phone, or does that free up more time for us to go spend with our wife, right? Or maybe because it didn't take us that long to plan it out, maybe I have time to help her cook. Maybe I have time to clean the dishes. Maybe I have time to help her prepare, cut the vegetables, cut one vegetable if that's all
exercise. You have time to like that's one thing AI I know I need to do this. It gives me more time to like, if I do all that, like I'm literally eliminating all the excuses like, Mike, why didn't you go for a run? Why didn't you go for a walk? Why didn't you do yoga? Well, I have to do this. No. Like so there's that too. Cause you know what AI can't do for you? Exercise.
Exercise. Yeah, that is true.
Right.
But you can make exercise fun if you parallel process and you're listening to a good audiobook, then exercising doesn't feel bad, right? I almost want to go exercise because then I get to make dents in my reading list and stuff. And I'm always learning and stuff. And I've gotten up to the point where I'm reading a book a week now.
Yeah. You just give me a great idea. So for me, like I like watching pro wrestling, but I haven't been watching it. If I tether that to exercise, which is basically, it's a physical. I was just literally in Vancouver this past weekend watching wrestling in Vancouver. A bunch of Canadians were on there. That literally just gave me like, why am I not like, I've got a treadmill, I've got this. If I'm watching wrestling at the same time, there's this parallel activity. Yeah. That's
exactly. It makes it more fun. And that's the thing about the book is everyone says multitasking, it's difficult, it's hard, but it's actually honestly makes life more enjoyable. I'm at the point now where I'm reading like a book a week or so on Audible, but just like little sessions. Just like I'm walking to the store. I take my cats for hallway walks because that's a long story, but they like to get out. They like to get a little bit of exercise and stuff. And so I walk in the hallway with them, meet the neighbors, and I get to listen to an audiobook while I do that. And my cats are happy, and I'm a weirdo, I know, but it's what they like. It's what the routine that our family has become, but all those little things. And so, but every time that I get a chance, and it's not that much, but that 4 books a month is not done just reading. I'm always doing something else, but I take a note I have a little note app on my phone that I take and I save those notes. Every time I hear a little thing that, tingles my brain, I save that note, build a big list of notes, get Gemini to summarize the book for me, get it to summarize my notes, why they're important, then build it into a bigger, and you'll see if I shared the secret chapter with you, you'll see the RAG that I built, the retrieval augmented generation, where now if I ever ask a question about a business, Gemini knows to go to this giant reservoir of business books that I've been collecting, my knowledge that I've vetted and put it in there. And I just keep building this, and hopefully that will make me rich one day when I know everything about business, right? And that's kind of the keep learning. But now I know that I'm not just reading, I'm able to save and then analytically think about and then reuse that information that I vetted and made sure I do want to include this in my long-term strategies. Same thing with human nature, psychology. I've done the same thing. And to help me, and I tell a story about how I, maybe ran into a little bit of issue when I was in Colombia. I just didn't understand the culture there. In Colombia, in Canada, it's a little bit more in finance. Everyone's your competition. You got to show how much better you are than everyone. In Colombia, they're actually your family. And I didn't understand that your coworkers are your family. And I didn't understand that concept for such a long time. So it was one of those things that now I've kind of dedicated myself to making sure that I understand psychology, human nature better so that I can be prepared for anything. But I don't just reading books, knowledge is in your brain, but is it really there, right? If you have a question, I can't, am I thinking about this the right way? And then you can challenge your knowledge. You can keep going forward in cycling. So, AI is not taking over the world, but it's there to support whatever we're doing, right? And I have my own crazy ideas that I've come up with, and, I've written a book and creating, an app that goes along with this, but everyone will have their own, version of how to use AI. And so it's one of those things that it's not something to be scared of. It's just, it's empowering, if anything, truthfully. I don't want to go back. It's scary. It's still kind of scary what could happen, but
sure.
I think they're talking about there's going to be more work. And that's what I'm going into, AI engineering, because everyone now needs, did you want to do anything without ChatGPT? Like, who wants to work going back, 5 years and taking 10 times longer to do anything? Every company now is going to need someone to set up a chatbot, because if not, every employee is going to go ask Gemini, ChatGPT, all these things, sharing all your company information with those public chatbots. So every company now all of a sudden needs a chatbot that has access, that's private, has access to their data. And so it's not taking over the world. It's creating more jobs, more everything at the end of the day. And
it's changing the world too. It's like
changing the world. Yeah.
Someone mentioned, I was thinking about this a few days ago, probably more like a couple of weeks ago. But farming, when the Industrial Revolution showed up and sped up farming, right? Like, tractors and all that stuff. Like, people were afraid that, oh no, there would be no jobs for so on and so forth. And we've had these innovations before. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be aware. Awareness is important. Being ignorant is not the answer. Being aware is important, but understand that there's always going to there have been consistently the need for humans. Now, what humans, that changes too. Like there's nuance to all of this, but the idea that you keep hearing of, if you don't get into AI, or if you're not, it's going to leave you in the dust. It's not, you don't have to go all in. Like, you're going all in, and that's totally, but you don't, but to dip your toe in, to be aware, I think is key. What I will say is that it sounds like you need to move to the island here in Vancouver Island, because we're we're a nice blend of Canada and Colombia when it comes to this. Because I'm from Hamilton originally, so
okay.
and Ontario was very much a work to live mentality, right? The island, live to work. The island is more of a work to live. Like, they don't, I actually had to slow down. I had to but the benefit is I can kick it up a notch when needed. So there is very much there is a competitive environment in the out west, but there's more. Maybe it's because we can go outdoor more, because it's still snowing in Toronto right now.
It's kind of nice. It's not Calgary. It's not Calgary. No. It's probably probably a blizzard today in Calgary.
Well, but nonetheless, I think it's so culture. You're right, though. I mean, every generationally, there's generational differences, there's cultural differences, all of this. But what can be said is that the idea of parallel productivity is something that we should all be exploring. Brandyn, where can people pick up the book and keep up with what you've got going on?
So on Amazon or at parallelproductivity.com, you can follow along with the developments and getting ready for the app that I'm building, the training room. I don't have an official name for it yet, but I'm using hopefully an app using AI agents. So it's not just to train, it's learning about how to manage tasks and manage AIs as well, but within the realm of parallel productivity. So I'm very excited for the app, and it's kind of something that I'm starting to develop at the moment right now.
Awesome. You mentioned a secret chapter. Are you willing to share that with people?
I am. I have maybe the link below.
Well, the link in the show notes, and we can put a link in once we get because we're doing a YouTube live right now. What we'll do is we'll put a link in there. We can do that a little bit later, but so we'll revisit this conversation. And for those that are watching, that are members of the Time Crafting Trust community, we'll throw it into because we did an event for this as well, so we'll throw it in there as well. But Brandyn, thanks so much for having a productive conversation with me today.
Thank you for having me out. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much. It was nice to hang out with another Canadian.
There you go, eh? All right. Okay, everybody, we're going to wrap up the live stream now. Brandyn, stick around for a second. Thanks to everybody who asked questions. I know we had quite a few that are out there, a lot of comments. Again, we'll kind of throw up some stuff here. I mean, we've seen quite a bit here, so I really appreciate everybody joining us today. This episode will go live on the podcast within short order. We have Janet. Thanks so much for the comments. And on those on LinkedIn, if you were watching it and you had some comments and stuff, I'll jump in and address them a little bit later. But what we'll do is we'll wrap things up. Take care, everybody, and we will see you later.